The rain was coming down in sheets that night, the kind of storm that made their road blur into one long stream of black water. Ethan gripped the steering wheel a little tighter, his headlights slicing through the downpour. He had just finished a late shift and all he wanted was to get home, tuck his son into bed, and collapse on the couch. But as he rounded the bend near the gas station, he saw two figures huddled beneath the broken streetlight. A woman in a drenched military uniform, holding the small hand of a girl who couldn't have been older than 7. Their bags sat at their feet, soaked through, and the mother's face was pale with exhaustion. Something inside Ethan stopped him before his mind had time to argue. He pulled over, rolled down his window, and leaned across the seat. "Do you need a ride?" he asked, raising his voice over the pounding rain. The woman hesitated, clutching her daughter's hand tighter. Trust didn't come easy, especially for someone who wore the weight of the world on her shoulders. But the little girl looked up at her mother with trembling lips and whispered, "Mommy, please." "See broken bar." That was all it took. The soldier nodded cautiously, and within seconds they were climbing into the warmth of Ethan's old pickup truck. The little girl shivered as Ethan handed her his son's spare hoodie from the backseat. "I'm Ethan," he said, trying to ease the tension. The woman gave a tired smile. "Carolyn, and this is Emma." The drive was quiet, except for Emma's small voice asking questions. She wanted to know if Ethan had kids, why he had stickers on his dashboard, and if he liked chocolate chip pancakes. Ethan chuckled and told her about his son, Luke, who was 10 and currently obsessed with dinosaurs. By the time they reached the small apartment complex, Carolyn had scribbled on a piece of paper. The rain had slowed, but Ethan's chest felt heavier. Something about the way Carolyn had stared out the window, lost in thought, unsettled him. He didn't press her, he just helped carry their bags, wished them good luck, and drove away, telling himself it was just a kind thing to do for strangers. But strangers don't always stay strangers. Weeks later, Ethan was making dinner, burning dinner. If he was Hansta when a soft knock echoed at the door. Luke was at the table, pretending to do homework but really sketching dinosaurs in his notebook. Ethan wiped his hands on a towel and opened the door to find Carolyn and Emma standing there. They weren't soaked this time, but the weariness still lingered in Carolyn's eyes. "Yeah, I hope this isn't too much," she said softly, "but I just wanted to thank you again. You helped us when we had no one." Emma peeked around her mother's side, grinning as she spotted Luke. "Hi, do you like pancakes?" she asked. And just like that, the evening changed. That night, they sat around Ethan's small kitchen table eating pizza because his attempt at pasta had failed miserably. Luke and Emma were laughing like they'd known each other for years, drawing dinosaurs together while Carolyn shared bits of her story. She had just returned from deployment overseas. Her husband, Emma's father, had walked out months before she came home, leaving her to rebuild a life she didn't recognize. The military had given her discipline and strength, but it hadn't prepared her for raising a daughter alone in a town where she had no family, no support system. Ethan listened quietly, feeling every word. He understood loneliness. He had been raising Luke alone since his wife had passed away 5 years earlier. 2 different stories, but the same ache. The weeks turned into visits. Sometimes Carolyn brought over cookies. Sometimes Ethan offered to watch Emma when Carolyn worked long shifts at the base. The kids became inseparable, turning hallways into racetracks and Saturday mornings into pancake competitions. But for Ethan and Carolyn, it wasn't simple. Both carried scars that didn't show on the surface. Ethan feared opening his heart again. What if it broke not just him, but Luke too? Carolyn wrestled with guilt, wondering if leaning on someone meant she wasn't strong enough. There were 2 people trying to survive, terrified of needing more than survival. The real challenge came one afternoon when Carolyn received the letter orders that she might be redeployed within months. She sat at Ethan's table with shaking hands, tears brimming in her eyes. "I can't do this again," she whispered. "Emma deserves stability. She deserves a home, not constant goodbyes." Ethan didn't have the perfect words. He just reached across the table, covering her trembling hand with his. "You're not alone this time," he said. And for the first time in years, Carolyn believed it. There were hard days after that. Days when Luke asked if Carolyn and Emma were going to leave forever. And days when Carolyn doubted whether she deserved happiness after so much loss. But love has a way of showing itself quietly, in small, ordinary acts. It was in Ethan fixing Carolyn's leaky faucet without being asked. It was in Carolyn teaching Luke how to tie better knots for his camping trip. It was in Emma whispering to her mom, "I think Ethan's house feels like home." And one evening, as rain tapped softly against the windows of the same kind of rain that had brought them together, Carolyn stood on Ethan's porch, holding Emma's hand. She looked at him, eyes shining with both fear and hope, and said, "Love doesn't always arrive loudly. Sometimes, it shows up soaking wet." Holding a child's hand, Ethan pulled her close, and for the first time in years, the silence in his home felt full of laughter, of possibility, of love reborn. They weren't perfect. Life would still throw challenges their way, missed shifts, childhood tantrums, lingering fears, but they had learned something unshakable. Family isn't always about where you start. Sometimes, it's about who shows up when the storm is at its worst and refuses to let you face it alone. And in the end, that quiet knock on the door had given Ethan not just new neighbors, not just new friends, but the second chance at love, at life, and at the kind of home he thought he'd lost forever.